Well, good morning once again for our business community support discussions that we have each week right here on the Main Street Fort Dodge Facebook page and also on Alpha Media's YouTube channel. So welcome and good morning. I am glad to be back in the saddle here. I know that last week there was some great discussions. I went back in and listened, and what a great job everybody did, and some great information that was passed along. We're going to have a great show again this week. Our presentation today is going to focus around some of the things going on with the mall project and also FarmHer, some very exciting things going on there. But first, before we get into that, let's bring on Cheryl O'Hearn with Spin Market Plus Digital, one of our regular organizers of this event. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning, and I'm glad to have you back too, because I don't know that I really like to moderate that well.
No, it's all on you. You guys did such a great job last week.
No, yeah, but I start talking about things that get me in trouble at home, and yeah, I need to watch out.
Anytime you bring up your husband, you're going to get in trouble.
That's how yeah. Well, good thing he's in the field and he doesn't really care right now. He's too busy doing other stuff.
Well, great. Well, let's also say good morning to Chris Patrick from Main Street Fort Dodge. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you again, Jed. Cheryl did a great job, though, I have to say.
Oh, well, thank you.
She did do a great job. I actually was able to catch part of the show live and did some sharing on our Alpha Media Facebook pages during the show. So it was great to watch a little bit of it from the background and kind of see what was going on from that angle of it. But we've got a great show coming up today, and I'm really excited to kind of share some of the things that are going on. One of our guests today is Marji with FarmHer. And Cheryl, tell us a little bit about Marji as we bring her on, because I know that you've worked kind of with her quite a bit. She's in one of your Goldman Sachs group as well. So you're pretty familiar with Marji.
Well, yes, actually, I personally met her then at Goldman Sachs in our Cohort 2 program last year in 2019. Hard to believe it's been a year, but I had the opportunity to meet her there. The ironic part is my husband knew of her immediately, and I said that last week. He goes, yeah, she's on rural TV or whatever, that one. He says, I see her all the time. So that was really interesting. And I had seen her, background and things that she was doing. I found it very, very interesting how she was taking agriculture under the, what women are doing in the agriculture, because a lot of times they get left out as to what they're doing. And there's some really great things that women are doing, farming and that type of thing. So that she's got a really interesting program, and she'll be talking to us about not only that industry on it, but what she's had to go through COVID-19, because as a media individual scheduling stuff, if you're not just like everybody else, if you can't social distance or whatever, she has kind of made a difference on her programming and what she's doing for her job.
Well, great. Let's bring Marji on and find out all about it. Good morning, Marji.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's good to have you on the program. So FarmHer, let's talk a little bit about what that is. What is the FarmHer program?
Well, FarmHer is, so I am born and raised here in Iowa. I'm actually just from up the road from you guys. I'm originally from Webster City, but I've lived in the Des Moines area for most of my life. I worked in corporate agriculture for about a little over a decade, and I needed to make a change. And so I came up, I left my job. I quit before I had a plan, honestly. And I was like, this is going to push me to figure out what I'm going to do with my life if I just jump off that cliff. And it did. So I saw a commercial on during the Super Bowl, like the weekend after I quit my job. And it was a Ram truck commercial set to a speech by Paul Harvey called God Made a Farmer. I'm sure you all have seen it. And I loved it. And ultimately, it helped me realize that maybe we don't see enough of what women do in agriculture. And at that time, 30% of farmers in this country by I think the 2007 ag census were women. And so I started a photography project, and I was just going to photograph a few women right here in Iowa and put it out on social media. And I made this super basic website, but my ultimate goal was to help people understand what women do in agriculture, how they play a significant role each and every day in making sure food gets on all of our plates, or shirts get on our backs, or the ethanol goes into the car, whatever that is. women are very prevalent all throughout the food system, in science and technology, engaged in agriculture. And so I wanted people to see that. Like I had this, like, I'm this person that started a photography project. I'm like, I'm going to change the way people see a farmer. It's grown and changed over the years. This is our 7th year. And ultimately we're a media company. We produce content for and about women. And I'm still sharing the stories of those same women. So just in a little different way.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up some of the stereotypes that exist out there. I mean, I think that's probably accurate. I think most people see women in agriculture as the pioneer woman and not much more. Right.
They are that. And they're one of the most common things someone will say to me, and women are, especially women right here in the Midwest, and they're really great at saying, oh, I'm just the farm mom, or I'm just the farm wife. And then I ask, what all do you do? And then the layers start to unfold, right? And so we keep our arms really wide with the term FarmHer. If you're engaged in it, nobody does it on their own, right? Like no one person can operate a farm. It's a big business no matter what. Like there's many hats to wear. So whether you make the food like the pioneer woman and take it to the field, or whether you drive the grain cart at harvest, or whether you keep the books, or maybe you get engaged on social media, whatever that is, like you're a FarmHer in our book.
Well, I love it. And since the beginning and just that original photo shoot, things have grown. So How did that happen?
Yeah. So remember, I worked in insurance before this. I spent my time on my undergraduate degree. It's behind my head. You can't see it. There. I went to Grandview University for graphic design, journalism, and photography. Promptly started working in insurance, So being on the front side of the camera definitely wasn't my thing. So I had a photography minor, and it started as a photo project, right? And the best thing I can say is, like, I love this. I love getting to share the stories of these women. I'm so proud of it. And it matters so much to them that it's something that I've run after really hard, and I won't give up. Right. So while I say the ball has rolled, it's like a snowball, right? It's just grown and grown. And so at first it wasn't even a business. And then in October of 2013, my accountant was like, if you want to be serious about this, you need to make it a business, trademark this name that you came up with. Thank God he told me to do that, because that's allowed us to, make an income. So we started doing some events. Over the last 5 years, we've hosted over 20 events for women in agriculture. We sell merchandise. We have the photos, we have the blog, we have social media. And then in 2015, I was coming home from the Clay County Fair, where exhausted, dead on my feet. And I get this voicemail from someone named Patrick Gotch, who owns RFD TV. And I don't know how he got my phone number, but he left a voicemail and said to call him back. And I'm glad I did. So that resulted in a trip over to Omaha, and me not saying no, even though I was scared to death about expanding this into a TV show. So in 2016, our first season of the TV show started airing. RFD TV, which you were talking about, Cheryl, your husband's seen it. A lot of people that I pass, and they're like, oh, my husband watches that. I just heard someone say the other day that FarmHer is the only show that he can get his wife to watch with him on RFD TV. They were looking for content for women and about women. And so we're in our 5th season now. So it airs in about 53 million households across the country, a 30-minute weekly television show, which has upped my travel quite a bit over the last 5 years. This year's been a bit of a challenge. We have a podcast and a SiriusXM radio show. So we tell the stories of women on many different fronts, but really that call from RFD changed the game in how we talk to people, for sure. And it forced me onto the other side of the camera.
Well, it's a neat story. And, it just goes to show that with the technology that we have today, anyone, anywhere can really make a name for themselves. And when you're passionate about a project like you are, Marji, things really do work out when you do the work.
Yeah. You know what? I tell people all the time, FarmHer would never be a thing without social media. Like I didn't have a budget. I just quit my job, right? Like, but if you take the time to figure out enough to be able to create a Facebook page, and I knew I had to have visuals, right? Having those photographs was a huge part, but all I had was a camera and a computer, and that was it, and passion about it, right? And I cared about it. And so, yeah, I mean, a business can start out of anything for sure, because I did it.
There you go. Okay, well, since this virus began really, I'm not going to say controlling, but certainly changing all of our lives in March, I'm sure that made a difference in your schedule and what your day looks like. How has it affected your business? How has it affected running a business?
Yeah, well, it's obviously anybody listening who owns or operates a small business in any way, it's scary. Like at first you're like, how is this going to affect me? I have no idea what's going on. I have 12 plane tickets right now because everything in my world just stopped. So keynote speaking is a big part of our business. We were trying to film the 5th season of our TV show. And so there's a really busy time for me in March, April, and May. And so, yeah, like I said, 12 plane tickets are sitting waiting to be used when I can actually use them again. It took a little while for people to shift into this format of speaking. But today I've got 2 keynote talks that I'm giving later today, right, at conferences. So at least that part is picked back up, but it's honestly, like the income is just not the same. So that's been a bit of a struggle. Our retail sales online in the spring dipped way down. We were down like 80%. And so those have luckily come back up. But we lost the state fair, it's about 1/3 of our merchandise sales for the year. And merchandise is one solid leg that we stand on here. And so that was a really big blow. I don't know that we all go to the fair and we spend our money, we drop a couple $100 maybe, but you don't realize how many, each and every one of those vendors at the fair, like how much they rely on it. So yes, thank you, Nikki. You like my smile shirt? So that was a really big blow, and trying to figure out how to film a TV show. If you follow what's going on in the television industry in general, filming of TV shows overall has been slow to start back up. I'm sure we've all been missing the starts of seasons of our TV shows. Luckily, we film on farms, and we could make that happen almost completely outside. And we have a crew of only 4. So it's not like we have 50 people that we have to bring with us, right? And so once everybody got comfortable in late June, we started traveling again. I've really only traveled by car, but our crew has flown in from Nashville. So we were in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska filming. We're going to be going to New England. I'm shocked that we've almost finished up the season. Honestly, it was a struggle at best. And I would say we're definitely not where we want to be in our editing, because everything got pushed back. But I'm trying to just push forward and think about what's coming next year, like what can we do to lay the groundwork for the things that we need to do next year. So, and also I took the downtime of me not traveling to kind of retool our brand a little bit. We reset our style guide. We relaunched a new website that's got way more like oomph and power for SEO under the hood. We did a lot of things that were kind of like sitting on the sidelines, and there wasn't a lot of time to deal with it. While it was a little scary to spend some money during all this, it has proven worthwhile. So I would say that I tried to get up and keep doing something every day that was going to move us forward eventually, as hard as that was. And it took a lot of walks. Oh my gosh, because it's just overwhelming, right? Like you're like, what is happening, and how can I change it? I can't, So
you must have been taking Cheryl's class, because Cheryl is nonstop talking about using the downtime to retool your brand and to make sure that your website is the best thing that it can be, because we do certainly have these downtimes, and so it's neat to see somebody who has taken that sort of sentiment and put it into practice. Marji,
Yeah.
you've got the opportunity to go travel to farms, and I'm interested to hear, especially when you do talk to women on these farms, how are they feeling about their farms? How are they feeling about just the current climate with the virus and how they're handling it?
You know, when I go to farms, the virus is definitely not the first thing they're talking about. Farms are the least affected place by the virus. I mean, I've been in places where they're like, we know the 2 people in this county that have had COVID, and this is not our main concern. They're respectful of it, right? But this is not the discussion, because I think one really, really great thing that farmers realize and that consumers realize more is the visibility of how our food system works came to light, I think, for so many people, right? Because if you start to get worried, can you buy meat at the grocery store? Then you start to realize, like, who's a part of that food system, where that food is coming from. So the visibility, I think, is good for everybody. But on farms, they just want to keep pushing forward. We've had a lot of challenges. We've got hurricanes, we've got derechos. There's a lot of people trying to figure out how to harvest as much of that down corn as possible here in Iowa. There's a lot of challenges, but farmers, it's really interesting. I feel like I don't want to call them like in crisis mode, but they're so used to market shifts and weather challenges that it's kind of like, this is not a thing. Like, this is not the thing that we need to worry about. So they're moving on. They're treating it like any other year, and they're getting their jobs done. They know how important it is for all of us to be able to eat. Now, I have been at farms where they've had to make major shifts. Okay, so think about a farm in Indiana that was a huge pastured poultry, pastured beef operation that was selling high-end large cuts to high-end restaurants in Indianapolis and Chicago and some large cities. Think how their business just came to a screeching halt. And so, and a lot of smaller farms too that relied on farmers markets. And so, having that email list is one thing I've heard. If you are a farmer and you are listening out there and you should start an email. If you have any sort of brand that's visual online that you connect with the consumer, even if you sell all your grain commercially, if you have a visible brand, that email list became so important to people this year, because then they had a way to reach their customers still when they couldn't reach them in the regular ways. It was like massive. But a lot of them had to shift from wholesale to retail really quickly. The animals don't stop just because all of the other parts and pieces in the food chain do. And so resiliency, incredible strength, and you know what, they're going to keep doing it the same way that they have, but it's not without its challenges. But again, the virus, it's kind of like, it's the least of their challenges, probably.
And you hit a really good point there, Marji. Farmers are used to planning years in advance.
Yes.
This is just the next month or 6 months down the line. They've got to think about that. What their grain is going to be. They order their seed and everything months and months in advance.
Yep.
And we do a lot of work with livestock in our trucking company that we have, and of course that took a screeching halt too, because they were not feeding and they were going to high fiber, and we were providing high protein products, lysine, out there to the big corporate ones. And so, that went to a screeching halt too there for a while. So you're right.
Yeah, it was hard, but again, farmers, I mean, they're just used to dealing with things that are out of their control, I think, already. So they're probably the most well prepared to push through something like this, I think. But it's not without its challenges. And we've had years of down economy in agriculture, and this one's going to be no different, and likely worse for many farmers. So I am fearful of what 2021 and 2022 brings. But you're right that they are looking forward and they're planning for it. I was at a farm in Nebraska where they are, with livestock, people are like, but we want meat now. Okay, well, that's like a 2-year process to be able to plan for, bring on the amount of cattle that you need to raise them, to process them. I went to a farm with a young woman who sells beef direct to consumer. She's completely sold out, and she will be all the way through to the spring. And their butcher that she has to still drive like 4 hours to get to for a USDA inspected butcher so she can sell it retail. They're out to 2022 in their processing. And like, that's some serious business planning right there.
Yeah, that's way out ahead. Marji, we could talk to you all day. There's certainly no doubt why your company is doing so great. So just one more thing before I let you go. If there's young ladies out there who just aren't sure where they fit into the ag world, what would you say to young women who are wondering if there's a place for them in agriculture?
There most definitely is a place for you. Agriculture doesn't look one way. Like, look at me. I exist in this industry, and I'm a creative person, right? Like, I take pictures and I write and I deal with video, so it doesn't look one way. So I promise you there is a place for you in this industry. You just have to be persistent about it, and this industry needs people so badly. It's food isn't going to go away. The need for food is never going to go away. Every single thing that we eat every day comes from a farm in one way, shape, or form. And so I would say don't be afraid to reach out to people. If you have someone in your community who you look up to, check out our FarmHer website. We've got stories of all different types of women. I'm a big believer, if you can see it, then you can do it, right? So go read those stories and find someone who's working as a scientist, find someone who's maybe working in insurance in agriculture, find someone who's driving the tractor or running the combine or doing a mix of all of it. We've got all of those stories out there because there's definitely a space for you. The number of women since I started this, per the most current ag census, has increased to 36%. And I think if we could truly get accurate numbers, it'd be actually much higher than that too. So see, there's a place for you. Let's keep that number growing.
All right, I love it. Marji, how do people find your website? I think it's probably pretty simple, but if they want to get one of those smile t-shirts, how do they do that?
I needed some happy shirts in my life, so we've got these smile t-shirts right now. It's amazing when you wear a shirt that says smile, people behind their mask might smile back. It's just farmher.com. That's FarmHer.com, and everything, you can get to everything from there.
All right, very good. Marji, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you, Marji. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
So much fun talking to Marji. What a great program that she's running there. Okay, so we want to continue right along in our program today. We want to bring on Ben Garrett, and Ben is the program coordinator, I believe, a development director maybe with the DCI Group, heading up all project here in Fort Dodge. Good morning, Ben.
Hey, good morning, Jed. How are you doing today?
We're doing really good. Thanks for joining us today. It seems that there is quite a bit of work going on in the heart of Fort Dodge right now. The group's been busy over there.
Yeah, certainly. I think as you guys touched on last week, we began, sort of the groundbreaking or the pavement removal of sorts of the new Unity Point Clinic. So we're pleased to have that sort of kick things off on the redevelopment project. And I thought maybe just as a background for people who maybe didn't watch last week or aren't local to Fort Dodge, the group that I'm involved with, working on behalf of, we acquired the mall in March of this year, which turns out is probably one of the worst times in the last 20 years to acquire a mall project. But we're working through obviously the COVID difficulties and sort of change the program a little bit, and retailers definitely have their hands full in this environment. So that's all part of the equation. But the ownership group, they were fortunate to have a city in Fort Dodge that was very open to working with them to create a development agreement that would attract retailers to the area and provide a lower cost project that's, I think the current mall has been in existence a long time. As you touched on, you've lost a lot of the major retailers there, but you still do have a vibrant tenant base. And, part of our part of what we've been tasked with, or what we've tasked ourselves with, is how do we create a project that is going to, from a cost benefit standpoint, be attractive to the current retailers that are in the mall, but also attract new retailers to the city. And as I mentioned, the retail industry right now is definitely having a hard time with the COVID for either mandatory shutdowns or just people being cautious going into retail locations. But we remain optimistic that we'll be able to convert over some of the existing tenants and also bring some new retailers to the community. With a 30-acre, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking that there's so many different questions going on in the community right now, and I think the one that I hear the most is, what is this going to look like? So I was wondering, can I bring up this photo and just kind of have you walk through a little bit, just sort of what this project is going to look like when it's completed?
Yeah, you bet. So it's a bit of a moving target. We're going to go through a couple different slides that are provided that sort of show an overview. And with the development project, we have a 30-acre site in total, and which is great to have that large of a space available in the middle of the community, and gives us all sorts of opportunities and flexibility to create something interesting. But it also creates, we sort of have several different iterations that we've put together as we sort of gauge interest and what is going to be, ultimately a demand for retailers, commercial space, potentially some senior housing in the community. And so what we're looking at here is one of our latest concepts. So the mall project, sits on a 30-acre site, roughly, going from memory, but 250,000 square feet currently. What this contemplates is, some of the feedback we had after sort of an initial rendition and started approaching retailers with lease rates that were above what they've been paying in the existing mall. But the feedback we got was, hey, we need a low cost option to stay in the market and be profitable as a business. So we took that feedback, and what we're looking at here is this is a portion of the mall that it's roughly 70,000 square feet that we would keep long term, I guess would be the way to say it. So we would tear it down to the sort of studs or to the metal, I should say, reskin it, new parking, new mechanicals, electrical, plumbing, all the new features of a new building, but at a lower cost than what a brand new construction would cost. And so what this concept right here is basically allowed us to buy down lease rates by $5 to $10 per square foot. And that is, especially in this environment, retailers are very cost conscious. So this is our way of helping address that. And I literally just got this concept sent to me last night. We're working with Shive Hattery, our architect, and they sent it over at about 10 p.m. last night. So this is sort of the first look at what this could potentially look like. And so now my job is, I'm tasked with approaching retailers with proposals. Hey, this is the space, here's where your footprint, how you would sit in the site. This is how the space is delivered, and ultimately negotiate leases to allow us to move this forward.
Do you know how many spaces you're going to be looking at when this thing is completed?
In this particular one, there's probably, say, 8 to 10 spaces. It'll ultimately depend on, we're going to approach the existing retail tenants, the Dunhams, Sears, Hallmark, those tenants, and we've been in contact with and had discussions with, but we're finally to a point where we can start to get into, I guess, firm negotiations. We have our costs figured out, what those are going to be. We've got sort of our template of what the building's going to look like. Now, the sizes of the bays, we have some flexibility here. This particular building is probably going to be best suited for, say, 4,000 to 40,000 square foot tenants, 4,000 to 40,000. And we have some other options that we're working through that would be better to accommodate the kind of the smaller, I won't say strip retail bays, but more of your, 1,500 to 2,500 square foot tenants. So we do have a few ideas in mind of where some of the existing tenants would go, but ultimately we're just kind of getting into the meat of those negotiations today.
Yeah, I got it. So, I mean, this just kind of is another photo kind of looking at that same rendition, but it might show where you might see like a Dunham's in the building.
Yeah, so we sort of have an opportunity to have anchors on each of the ends of this particular layout. So the end caps would sort of accommodate the 10 to up to 40,000 square foot tenants. So we would be looking for somewhat of an anchor for those spaces. And, you know, I watched the show from last week, and, you know, Chad and Vicky did a great job of sort of explaining the project. And I would say just, you know, the city of Fort Dodge has been very great to work with on this. And, you know, a project like this would not happen in that community unless they were willing to step up and sort of go to bat and, you know, negotiate a development agreement that allows us to produce something or provide a end product that ultimately I think is going to be a win-win for the city and you know, members of the community. So if you maybe flip through, there's a couple other slides, maybe the aerial one. Yep, okay. So this is another. There we go. And so this was sort of on the south, or closest to us would be south, so Fifth Street there. But this is, you know, the kind of what we master planned of how we think might look at the end of the day. You know, ultimately it's going to be supply demand. So, you know, we have a bunch of great ideas, and this is a pretty picture, but ultimately we need to be able to attract, you know, the right concepts to the project. And we've had a high level of interest. I mean, as you touched on last week, your typical, the old, you know, big box retail where you have Yonkers and Pennies and those types, you know, even like Ross Dress for Less, some of these larger tenants, you know, I don't think that's a retail of the future. And you've got some of the larger tenants that are still active in the market, but you know, DCI Group, we're headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa, and even in Des Moines market, there's only been several retail big box that have been active as far as any expansion plans in the last several years. So we, of course, are talking to those groups and, you know, would welcome them to this project. But I think as you look forward, you know, the retail is just going to look much different than it has, you know, the last 50 years. With COVID, I would say, you know, I think this process had started well before COVID. You may be hearing the term more and more omnichannel, which basically means, you know, a retailer sort of, they market through an omnichannel. And what that means is it's a combination of brick and mortar, online, and potentially, you know, phone sort of correspondence to attract consumers to their businesses. And I think COVID probably expedited that, you know, moving away from, you know, I think we've been drifting away from the retail brick and mortar, but I think ultimately there's still going to be a place for brick and mortar. It's just going to be a component as opposed to maybe the focus as it has been over the last number of decades. So
as we take a look kind of at this overhead view here, I mean, I think this, as I am understanding it, really does change the landscape quite a bit. Rather than one centralized building with you know, parking surrounding, you're really talking about a more dispersed usage of the property, where you do have buildings throughout and a more strip mall style. Would that be sort of an accurate representation of what we're looking at here?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, again, you're moving away from the larger kind of bulk, you know, 50,000 square foot plus tenants that have traditionally anchored projects of this size. And, you know, I think the key to making this a successful project is how do we activate the space? And how do we get daytime traffic there? How do we get nighttime traffic there? And how do we sort of integrate it with the community? You know, I mean, we've had a number of conversations about different ideas that would ultimately draw more foot traffic to the area. And so, you know, one of the concepts we're looking at currently is a component of having some senior housing. So you'd have people that live there, they could shop there, have entertainment there, eat there. And, you know, that's the type of thing. And also, you know, potentially some community space. And in the center of this particular drawing, it's the water feature. We want that to, sort of activate the space and not just be some, sort of boring detention pond that's just in the way. And so those are the things, maybe having space to accommodate a, monthly or weekly concert series in the summer. Those are the types of things that draw bodies in, and maybe the reason that they come there isn't necessarily to go shopping, but but they do end up going shopping and spending money there as a result of, being drawn in by something else.
Does so when you talk about senior housing, these sorts of things, entertainment, this space may not be limited, it sounds like, to strictly a retail piece. There may be other components that fall into this.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say, in this particular concept, it contemplates some mixed use, it contemplates some office. We would love to get some sort of hospitality hotel to the market. Now, some of these uses are going to be harder to attract in the current environment, but just because it's harder doesn't mean we're not still pursuing those opportunities. I don't think you're not going to see 300,000 square feet of retail taking the space of the mall that's sort of slowly been being vacated over a number of years. And so how do we draw people in? For example, an office building, well, that creates some daytime traffic, and they'll need some place to go have lunch and maybe some place to entertain clients. And we still want to be the centerpiece of the community. And I think with the backing of the city and some of the connections, obviously, I think you spoke a little last week about the retail coach, and a lot of these national retailers, they sort of drop a pin on the market and they do a demographic search, and how many, what's your local population, what's your shopping, your ring of how many people actually come to the community and spend dollars. And population of Fort Dodge might be close to 25,000 versus you have more of a trade area of 100,000 people because it's a regional draw. And so those are the things, some of the retailers you sort of have to get in front of and tell the story, because, Fort Dodge is not a large market. And some of these groups that we'd like to get to come to the town, and I saw some of the commentary, Panera, Texas Roadhouse, some of those groups, we've been in touch. That sometimes it's a long road, and I think especially with COVID, that most of the retail news coming out right now is negative, and I think a lot of the retailers are sort of batting down the hatches versus being willing to commit to a long-term new location. But I mean, that will change, and I think the current environment, everybody sort of has put the brakes or pause button on a number of projects, but we're still actively working deals, and we're optimistic that when people get sort of their footing back under them, that we're going to be well positioned to capture those groups.
You mentioned it earlier, but it really is sort of the truth that when you guys come on board early March, by March 15th, most of the country's beginning to shut down. I really don't think you could have timed anything to be sort of a worse time situation. What does that do for those real retailers? Were you having conversations with retailers that suddenly put the brakes on, or are there some retailers who are still pushing forward?
Yeah, I would say, on the whole, it's just been very difficult on retail. And to your point, I think if our timing, we were probably within 1 week of the worst time to, take on a project like this. But, the owners never wavered in the fact that, we'd already negotiated work with the city to get a development agreement in place, that we feel like this is still going to be a successful project. It might change the timeline a bit, but, we're going to be well positioned to, when things do pick back up, and a year from now, hopefully, or maybe less, who knows, we're back in negotiating mode and getting in front of these groups. I think one of the statistics that the retail coach had provided us is the foot traffic at the mall had dropped off 79%, from several weeks before the pandemic started till just after. And now, part of that was initially, I think, a number of mall tenants closed, and we actually closed the mall for a period of time. Now everybody's sort of learning, how do we operate in this environment? And there's additional costs. There's still people that are very cautious about how that transpires. But I give an example of, there's a place in Des Moines that you walk up, scan the menu on the table, you put in your credit card information, you order your food, you tell them you have a table number 19. So somebody brings your food out, you've already paid for it, you've had no contact, and literally you could sit out on the patio, never have to walk inside. Now, patio season's sort of coming to an end, but those types of things and features, I think people seek out now, and maybe people that were maybe a little behind the curve were having a little more trouble, and those that were on top of things maybe prior to the pandemic provided a little boost that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So you're going to see, these businesses are resilient, and figuring out a way to live in the current environment, is the name of the game. And I think the people that are the businesses that are nimble and listen to their consumers are going to do well, and others won't. I think the statistic is something like in Canada, there's 16.8 square feet per capita of retail space in the country. And in the United States, that's 23.5%. And so we're already almost 50% more retail per capita than our neighbors to the north. And so potentially, I remember went to a seminar 2 years ago, an expert in this made that point. And I think some of it is, this sort of is hastening maybe the shrinking of some of the retail footprint across the country. But that doesn't mean that there's still not opportunity. And I think the well-run businesses and the ones that have a niche and sort of stay in their lane are going to survive and prosper and do better, with a less competition ultimately down the road.
Sure. So to Nick's point here, Nicholas Moore, thanks for making a comment, or I guess in this case a question. Can you make any big announcement? Can you come out and say wholeheartedly that this is the list of people, or are we going to have to wait a little bit to get those names?
Unfortunately, not. We're in a number of negotiations, and I don't want to speak prematurely in what happens there. We are actively negotiating with a number of groups. As I said, the one first concept showed with renovating some of the existing space. I got that concept at 10 o'clock last night, so we're the first ones here to see it, and none of the retailers have seen it yet. So, yeah, breaking news. But back to the first concept, I think. So part of it is, much like Marji talking about FarmHer, it's not flipping a switch as far as supplying beef to the industry or whatever the commodity might be, but there's a process that a lot of front end planning and costs involved with putting a project like this together, and we've gone back to the drawing board several times based on some of the feedback that we've had, and so I'm confident that this concept is something we're going to be successful in. But this particular building is, the next week, my job is to write proposals to approach tenants and work with them, and ultimately get to a lease agreement that allows us to make this project happen. So, or this particular building happen, I should say.
Sure. Now, as we move forward with this, and I'm sure it's a moving target and extremely fluid, as you guys have had to change on a dime probably multiple times, but are there timelines that you're kind of looking at, or goal timelines that you sort of set forth as to when folks in the community might see finished buildings that look similar to this or anything like that?
So this particular one, what we've sort of penciled in timeline, there's obviously some front end negotiation that has to happen with tenants before with the switch and it's a go. But our hope would be about a year from now, we would be opening doors on this particular building. The Unity Point Clinic that we've already begun, the process and actually that work. The hope is that will be open sometime around June next year. That obviously we'll be doing construction through the winter on both of these projects, so that plays a part. But I think those are both realistic timeframes. And also, we also have another building concept, one of them that you had showed, that would be a smaller building that would accommodate some smaller users. And our hope is we could get that project underway as well in the next several months, get that started. So yeah, this one right here, the sort of the rough time frame would be, build a new building start to finish is maybe approximately 10 months, but there's also a lot of pre-planning involved. So, that's roughly a year time frame to bring a project on board and open the doors. But as I said, we've been very pleased with the city, and we've been I know this has caused some turmoil for the existing tenants at the mall, and we've done what we can to mitigate that. Change is hard, and it's definitely this project is going to require a lot of change, but like I said, we're trying to help the existing tenants stay profitable and open and accessible to the community while we're undergoing this pretty large redevelopment project.
Excellent. So just one other thing, Ben, if there are a lot of business owners do watch this podcast or this video as it goes along, if somebody is interested in space, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. We've got several signs up at the site. I don't know if after the broadcast I could share you my email and put it somewhere just to have that accessible to the group. But I'm at DCI Group. Our website is www.dcigroup-us.com, and my contact information is there. And of course, anyone with the city has my contact information, and we sort of work in tandem with them. And I'm going to be up in the community more and more often as these negotiations sort of get a little more in depth. So that's
well,
very good.
Also,
so much.
I'd also like to pass on, Ben, if you do have any updates that you want to make sure are getting out there, we'll be happy to schedule something with you as well in the future. So feel free to reach out to us anytime as well.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the opportunity to sort of showcase this project. I think ultimately it's going to be great for the community, and we're looking forward to having some success.
Excellent. Well, Ben, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate all the very useful and good information on what's going on with the project. So I hope we can talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
Project definitely underway. Another pair of great guests going on today, guys. And so I'm excited to see kind of how this thing's going to play out and what this is going to look like in the coming months. And, I think for every business, nobody was expecting to have a complete economic shutdown for several months and then slowly running back into it. But both of the guests that we've talked to today have done such a great job of really dealing with those situations as they came and finding ways to modify what they were doing and make small changes to make sure that they could stay in business and really thrive in a time when times are still difficult.
Exactly. And I think bringing both of them on gives support to our area businesses out there to say, hey guys, everybody's going through the same thing, and listening to how they attacked it and were able to grow with it as well. Marji talking about across the United States and giving us a perspective that way. And then of course, Ben talking about what they've had to go through. And I think that's really important for our community to understand the timeline and the logistics that go into these type of planning. When he talks about it's a year from the time that they figure out what they're going to do with the building until it's really open for tenants. If people are expecting things to start happening in January, it's just not. And it's not because people aren't working in the back. It just takes time. And there has to be a little bit of patience on it and a little understanding. And the more we can communicate that to the public, the easier it'll be for everybody in the future.
I think Ben made a couple of good points too. Being nimble and fluid, I think are really what those successful businesses are doing, being nimble and fluid.
I totally agree. This came out from Governor Reynolds' office. recently allocating $100 million in CARES Act funding to support Iowa agriculture. What great timing this is, as many of our farmers are in the midst of, especially in our area, following a derecho with, that corn that's been laid over and that sort of thing, to, just assist our farmers who are, in some cases, seeing, highly reduced yields at the moment.
Well, and in our area, it's been more of a drought, actually, in Webster County. Almost 2 months of no rain, and that's really put a damper on it. So it is a situation, and of course the farmers, as Marji stated, they have to go with the flow. The weather is something they have no control over year after year, and they're already planning for the 2021 year on there, and hoping that they can get as much of the crop in. The weather's been decent, so getting the crop in and getting as much, making sure that none of the corn or the beans are falling on the ground, because they need every one of them in order to make their yields this year.
Well, Chris, let's talk for a moment about some of the updates that you have going on with Main Street Fort Dodge. It's kind of a busy time of year for you guys. You just have a lot going on right now.
Well, we really do. I think at the top of our list is the shopiowa.com, the mobile SBDC unit, where they have the camera and the staff to help onboard retailers, is coming to Fort Dodge on October 12th. They had 6 time slots, and we have filled 4 to date with downtown retailers. So if you're a retailer and you've been thinking about shopiowa.com, now is the time. They have appointment times left at 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. on October 12th. So either give Kimberly Tiefenthaler a call or give me a call, and I will send that information directly to Brianna Hall. Pretty excited about that we're going to see our retailers on that platform. Also, we are still in the middle of our downtown revitalization project. We have opened up, I think, 4 buildings to date. So if you drive down Central Avenue, you're going to see a lot of construction work, and the fronts of buildings looking much different. They're not anywhere near done, but really being able to see that historic content, which was behind some of those plywood pieces and steel siding. So our challenge grant with Tom Groff at 13 North 11th Street, home of the soon-to-be bakery, is coming along quite nicely. We are working with our retail group, and right now we have postponed Ghouls Night Out. We're trying to come up with a different event, still being cautious with bringing people from store to store in large groups. So we're working on that downtown and have lots of fun things planned for November, end of November and December, for shopping and sightseeing downtown with holiday lights. So we're still working away, but like the mall project and a lot of the retail and business recruitment in the downtown, it's behind the scenes. So a lot of the times people don't realize things are really moving forward when they can't see it.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, we've had another great show this week, and we've got another great show lined out for next week already. We're looking forward to Jim Thompson, Downtown Economic Development Specialist at Iowa Economic Development Authority, joining us and just talking to us about some of the things that are going on and the growth, and dealing with some of the hurdles that folks might be facing right now as well. So another great show coming up next week. We do this every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Right here on the Main Street Fort Dodge Facebook page. And we'll do it again next week. I'm Jed Burns, Market Manager for Alpha Media here in Fort Dodge. We usually have a great slate of folks who are a part of organizing this, including Cheryl O'Hearn, the Marketing Director of Spin Market Plus Digital, Chris Patrick, the Executive Director of Main Street Fort Dodge, and she'll be joining us again sometime very soon after she gets all moved into Iowa Central Community College. America's SBDC, Kimberly Tiefenthaler, Regional Director, will be joining us with updates there as well. And it's so good to hear from her when we get the chance to do that. I know that there's a number of businesses who are taking advantage of the services they offer, everything from helping to put together a business plan or understanding your business cash flow. They do all of that and help our local businesses and help support everything that goes on in our community. So that's going to do it for this edition of our show. Thanks everybody for joining us. Cheryl, Chris, thanks for being a part of it once again. And
Yes.
see you guys next week.
Yes, thank you. Great show. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.